Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and today I want to talk about do market at the correct time. Now, I want to talk about this because I have seen a disturbing trend in both books and video games of authors and video game developers, especially indie developers, um, marketing their projects too early. And it is very tempting to market too early because you're excited about your idea. You have things you want to share and see if everyone else will be excited as you are. And it's easy to forget you aren't part of a community making stuff with your friends or your classmates anymore like you were in college or, in a fandom space, but you want to sell a product. You're selling a product. Marketing is about a product. It's also a job. So doing this too early is a bad idea. You want to do it at the right time. Now, it's a bad because it sets false expectations. You put yourself in a time crunch, and you know, you you're when you start marketing, as soon as you start marketing, your project stops being a project, something that you're passionate about, and becomes a product. So let's go over all of that. So when you start marketing your product, where you are ever in the very early stages of your project and you're putting it out there by talking to, video games, news media, big or small, or YouTubers, or, you're putting out a book trailer and book talk, it starts setting false expectations. Okay, what people see first is usually what gets stuck in their head of what the end product is going to look like or be like. That's why in most game presentations, if you're going to do a pitch to studio heads and you don't have the end assets ready, they recommend using gray blocks. Cinti Studios has put out a prototype kit specifically for prototyping games that don't have end-use assets yet. It's for sale on Unity. You can buy a ready-made kit of colored blocks. And it is so easy to go to Unity or go to the Unreal store and buy really great looking assets, whether they're realistic or they're low poly or they're, the polygon style, which some people are like, that is low poly. No, I've seen low poly be a very smooth looking, then you got the blocky style. Okay, you use these for your prototype of the game. Your customers get an idea of what the game is going to look like from those assets. You decide to use all the super hyper realistic stuff from the Unreal store because they have all this, stuff they've taken the 3D photos of that they're using for movies, and you are going to use it in your video game, okay? And then you buy some realistic assets looking, characters and stuff like that, okay? That's what your customer's going to think your game's going to look like. They think it's going to be a highly realistic, style of game. And then if you and your buddies and the people working on the game with you don't have the capability to produce those same type of high quality assets for your game, and you publish a game that doesn't look hyper realistic like your trailer did when you were going to do your Kickstarter, then, your customers rightfully get pissed because they believe they've been defrauded of their money because you showed them a trailer of a hyper realistic looking game and they did not get a hyper realistic looking game. I do have a game in mind for this, but I'm not going to say the title. Okay, so say you put out a book trailer. You load it up with your favorite tropes. Or you do a bunch of skits about stuff you think you want to put in your book on TikTok with, funny hats. Or you put up an excerpt of your writing because you're doing a writer's life video and you're like, I'm writing this part of the book and this is going to be in the book, okay? And then the book comes out. It's like a movie or a television trailer. Your readers are going to be looking for those scenes, for those tropes, for that particular section of writing. And if it's not there, then they get rightfully upset because you sold them a book that doesn't exist even in your imagination, no matter how well-intentioned your book trailer was, or the skit, or the excerpt of writing, okay? You don't want to get people's hopes up or hype up about a product and then deliver them a completely different product. And because they are not going to be as understanding about, oh, my editor said I needed to pull that bit. They don't care about your editor. They care about, they have been following you, writing this, doing this project, doing this in now what you have promised them was going to be in the project is not there in the end result product that they have paid hard-earned money for. Right, so, wait. Wait. Right. And then, okay, so let's say you're doing these, a Kickstarter for a video game idea that you're just gotten out of the ground. Maybe you have something of a game design document, and yeah, you've gotten some assets from Unreal Unity, and you've got an artist friend to make up some headers on Kickstarter with the art style you want. So you put up a Kickstarter because you're looking for money to make a video game, or you're using it as marketing to tell investors, look, so many people on Kickstarter invested in our game. There is a demand for our game. You should invest in it too. So once again, we've got the false expectations, and now you've thrown yourself into a time crunch. Okay? Once you start marketing a product or your project, especially in today's algorithm-driven society, once you go viral, if it's a book, you've got maybe a year to get that out. If it's a video game, I'd say 2, maybe 3, depending on the size of the project. If it's an MMO, you will have people who will be patient to wait through the whole 5 years of development, or 7 years. I'm not sure where Ashes of Creation is yet, but people have been remarkably patient with him. But they have put in 35 million of their own money, so, there's less chance of it failing, okay? So, okay, you put out a book trailer, and now you have a year. So you've put out this book trailer. If you do not have that manuscript complete, and that book trailer goes viral, and you get a publishing deal out of it, you're going to be putting out a rushed product. I'm sure you know which book I'm talking about if you're anywhere up in the book community type of thing. Okay? Rushed products, especially if it's your first book, are usually disasters. Now, I have actually seen this more than once. Authors going, I went viral on TikTok from my book trailer or book skit, and I didn't have my book finished, so I had to rush writing it. And I didn't get the time editing that I wanted. Alright? And once you start this marketing, okay? Once you start this marketing, this type of marketing that goes viral, whatever it is you're doing on TikTok, or whatever it is you're doing with your Kickstarter, or whatever your gimmick, or, doing live streams and for you making assets and stuff like that for your video game, you have to do that all the way up to the time that you publish your product, and then for a year afterwards or more, depending on if you're writing a standalone or a series. You have to keep that type of marketing up if you want to keep a steady stream of sales. You can't just stop, oh, I've, produced the book, I've published the book. You can't just stop your, viral type marketing. You have to keep going, okay? Once B. Dylan Hollis published Baking Yesteryear, it's not like he stopped making his cute, fun, you know, punny type of cooking videos on TikTok where he screams into the camera. He didn't stop doing that because he still needs to do that, for a year or two to keep the sales coming for Baking Yesteryear. For a while it was just him yelling at the camera, and then once he had the publishing contract and he knew what was going to be in the book and everything, and he had an actual physical book to hold in his hands, he could start going, and oh yes, I am publishing a book and bringing up the book for, 5 seconds or less in every single, recipe video that he makes. But that is what you would have to do for at least a year or more on that type of series, or more, especially if it's a series. And if you're doing a series and you're indie publishing on Amazon, and don't have that privilege of a traditional publishing contract, so you have, depending on your genre, 6 months to a year to 2 years between books, you on Amazon are going to have a new book every 3 months. So you can't just write one book in advance. You have to write either the entire series, if it's under 10 books, or I'd say, depending on how fast you write and how long they are, at least 6 of them. That's a year and a half of publication. And I'd say most books published on this scheme are between 50,000 to 80,000 words. You'll need them written, edited, with covers, and whatever marketing scheme you're going for as long as you're publishing them, and probably at least a year after, if not more. This is why you can't make your books your brand. This is why you can't make your game your brand. You have to make you your brand, okay? You aren't going to have just one book or just one video game or just, or one book idea or one book series or whatever in you. Your TikTok can't be your book title or your book series, because once you finish writing that book or series, or once you publish that video game, you don't want to start all over on a new TikTok. So if you are a development studio and you're publishing games, you're going to want your TikTok to be that development studio. You don't want it to be the game, okay? Maybe, the game, Calico game, say your Peachy Keen Studios actually exists, and you're a 2-person studio working with Unity stuff, and you're changing a whole bunch of stuff, and you're making a cute little cat game. Well, you're going to want to be Peachy Keen Studios, not Calico Game, because it's quite possible as Peachy Keen Studios, you're going to want more than one game. Sure, you might have a Calico Game, social media for Calico Game, just in case you're ever going to update it or add a DLC or something, but you're going to want Peachy Keen Studios to do all the marketing for every single game you've got. You're marketing your studio, you're not marketing your game. You're marketing yourself as an author, and you're not marketing yourself as one book. Once you have that momentum on social media anymore, especially on social media, you don't want to start over with a new thing, because that means you're starting all over from the ground up and getting new followers and, getting people spreading your stuff. You're making those network connections. You don't want to do that. It's a lot of work. It is a job. Okay? So, yeah, you're going to be doing some type of gimmick on your name TikTok about your books, or your, your studio TikTok about the game you're developing. But you can change that gimmick up for, different types of books or different types of games. So here's the question. What is your gimmick, and are you a theater kid or not? I mean, I am a theater kid. I probably could do some skits. It's just, I have a choice with my health. Either I am writing books or I am doing marketing. I can't be doing both, which is unfortunate because that's where we have to be in these day and age, okay? You know, while you're doing marketing, especially if you don't have anybody else to do it for you, you won't be having time to write more product. So unless you sit in a very high place of privilege where you can farm some of the editing and production stuff out, like costumes, you're going to be doing all this yourself. Okay? This goes for video games as well. Once you do any type of marketing, you will have only so much time before you lose the customer's attention. And you are going to be beholden to deadlines from investors, and if you're using Steam, from Steam, your distributor. Okay? And, you know, you're going to have this gimmick, and you're going to have to keep doing the gimmick up, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes time away from making the product. So, yeah. Right. Once you start marketing, your passion project stops being a project and becomes a product. Product is something you have to sell, and people are going to pay money for it. So it has to fit a certain standard. So if you're writing a book, you can't have a dozen or more typos and grammar mistakes on every page. Now, I know probably in the Dawn Warrior here, I have upwards of a dozen, somewhere of a dozen probably grammar or spelling mistakes throughout the entire book. The Lone Prospect, they pause a lot. You know, I worked on that. But it's the same thing. You know, I don't have, hundreds of spelling errors in grammar errors in there because that wouldn't fit a certain standard. It's the same for video games. You can't have bugs in your game, okay? You can't have bugs and glitches, and you can't have 5 different art styles. You have to meet a standard. So, and you have to do certain things, about what is the product done, so you don't fall foul of laws that will mark you as a scam or as somebody who has defrauded people out of money, and, you have to give all that money back. So when you start marketing, this is the point. You have to know who your target customer is. It's no longer a passion project. It is something for sale. You can't ride on, I'm making it for me, because you are a market of one, and your book or video game needs to be for a market of thousands in order to make whatever money, and I include time in this because there's a shop rate multiplied by time to make your labor, which is part of your overhead. You can't say, oh, I'm making this for free with my friends in my spare time. You're making a product now. And even if you aren't giving yourself salaries, you still have to sit there and go, my time is worth this amount of money, times the amount of time I put into this, multiplied to the amount of time. And if a game has to cost so much, and we put this much labor into it, we have to sell this many units to cover just the cost of labor. So you have to know who your target market is and who your comp games are, so you have an idea of how big your market is going to be and whether or not you can move that many units based on your marketing, So there are creators out there, especially in the games industry, who have no idea what their competition, other indie games often, or previous games are doing. So you can end up with multiples of the same type of indie video game, none of them which are going to be successful because they've already been done back in the 90s or the 2000s, and we can still play those games thanks to Steam. So yes, it's very imperative in my opinion to have a game design document for your game if you're going to start marketing this early, but I don't recommend marketing this early. So you need to market at the right time. Market when you know your target customer. If you're making a video game, market when you have a game design document done at the very least. You should have your product in the final stages. Whether or not this means your book is at editing or your video game has the final assets you're moving around, this means you may have to push off your publishing date because you want that year worth of marketing, and that's okay. The time you spend marketing after your book is in editing, or your video games in the very final stages of being completed, you can also spend the time to polish your book even more. Grab every single typo you can, make sure that your plot is like airtight, or you can make your video game into a better product, or be able to over deliver to your customers with an extra short story or more mechanics to the game you wanted to put in the first place but hadn't promised because you weren't sure you were going to do it. Market at the right time, and then you can underhype and over deliver. So if you market at the right time, your customer base won't have false expectations. You won't put yourself into a time crunch where people's attention will wander away after a year or two, and now you've got a product and nobody who wants to buy it because they've forgotten about it. And you don't you won't turn your project into a product far too early. So you have a time on your project to figure out who your target customer is going to be, to get through punch through those very first ideas and figure out what your competition is doing, so you can make a game that's different from everybody else's, that will still make people excited and want to play it, but they won't look at it and go, well, I can play that game from the 2000s on Steam and it will cost me a lot less than your game, so why should I play your game? Okay. And when you market at the right time and you have that time to breathe between the final stages of your product and actually publishing that product, you can add more to the product and polish the product and make it really stand out from everybody else. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Take your time with making your projects, and take your time and plan your marketing if you're going to be doing that type of TikTok style marketing. And bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.